Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Hi, Russ.
How you doing?
Welcome to Finding the Magic Book podcast. We have Russ Colchamiro. Hopefully I got that right.
Yep.
He is a sci-fi author, and he's here to talk about the Angela Hardwicke sci-fi mystery series. It looks like Angela is a private investigator solving mysteries, but not just any PI. So jump in and tell us about the series, the characters. What can we expect?
Sure. So there's 5 books in the series so far. So there's Crackle and Fire, Fractured Lives, Hot Ash, Blunt Force Rising, and I don't think you can see that one down here, and Trigger Point, which is the 5th one, which by the way just won through one of the through a group just called awarded this book of the year for 2024.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Yes. So in my mind, Hardwicke, she's part Blade Runner, part Doctor Who, part John Wick. So think of right. So think of this. She's a hard-boiled private eye, and she takes on the kind of cases that you think a private eye would take: missing persons, kidnapping, extortion, arson, murder, corporate espionage. But she also takes on cases that deals with time travel, parallel universes, androids, alien uprisings, folds in space-time, miles-long helix of the universe's DNA, all this kind of sort of cosmic shenanigans. So all the cases start off, they're all kind of street level, and she does, gritty, door-to-door, gangsters and back alleys and dangerous characters, real-time investigation. But she also gets involved with this kind of sci-fi, heavy sci-fi world where there's, some of it's very heavy cyberpunk, some of it is more off-world, but it's all very kind of gritty, and it's a mix of noir and really sci-fi thrillers, and some of them are more, there's action in all of them, but some are more action-packed than others. Some of them have more horror to it. Some of them are more conspiracy themed, and others are more kind of are more personal in nature. There's 5 books in the series, and what's important to understand is you can read the books in any order. These are standalone thrillers. You do not have to start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, although you can, and you don't have to commit to the whole series. If you just want to read one and be done, all good. Think of it like James Bond, right? There's 25 James Bond movies. You don't have to watch all 25. Pick one. If you like it, you watch another one. If you don't. It's okay. So you don't have to commit to it, but you can, and there is character development throughout. So if that's important to you, maybe you want to start at the beginning, but I reintroduce all the characters and the world building every single time out, so that every book in theory could be book 1 for you. Or it could be one and done, or you could read multiple. So that's just kind of like a bigger frame up of kind of like what the series is.
Right. So, well, that's a really great aspect to know too, when you're finding new author, new series, like what to expect, and that's great that they can all be read as a standalone. So set the time period up. How far in the future are we talking?
So Hardwicke operates in a realm outside of us. All right, she operates in a realm which is a spin-off of another series that I did, which you do not have to read at all. So she lives in this realm, which I call eternity, but it's a realm, and it's not on any star maps. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to book a flight there. You can't it's not accessible unless you're kind of in this realm. And think of eternity kind of like it's what like Hollywood is to the movie studio business. is what eternity is to the physical creation of the actual universe itself, right? So in Hollywood, what do? They make movies, they make TV shows, they make commercials, but every business in Hollywood kind of also supports the movie, like the entertainment industry, right? The lawyers, the bankers, the accountants, the restaurants, and on and on. Everything is kind of a subset of that. In Hardwicke's world, eternity is set up to, they design, they can physically construct and repair the physical universe. Planets don't appear, somebody builds them. Asteroid fields don't appear, somebody builds them. They have to be commissioned, they need architects and designers and technicians and engineers and all that kind of thing. And that's kind of what her world is like, in service of, well, everything. And in her world, she happens to be a private eye who winds up, in addition to the normal cases, she specializes in these kinds of really, dangerous sci-fi mysteries that most PIs just want no part of, because it's just way too dangerous and way too complicated. And she just kind of has that particular kind of mojo that says she wants to play in the most dangerous of places.
Fun. So when you're talking about like hard sci-fi versus soft sci-fi, where would you rate this?
Somewhere in the middle. So some of it is very kind of Blade Runner-y, Blade Runner-esque. Certainly as the series kind of continues, where you're going to see, there are androids, there are hybrids of cybernets, where some people have cybernetic implants and some don't. You're going to get into some engineering and some air and into some astrophysics, but you're also going to get into just very standard, things work because I say they work, right? You can be teleported to another realm, another planet, another place, because I say you press a button and you go there. I'm not necessarily going to break down all the physics and the mechanics of all that work. So it's a little bit of blend. It's more sci-fi than science fantasy, though.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you like things that are think of it more Blade Runner, Escape from New York, and a little bit less like Pew Pew, Zampow.
Fun. And why did you decide to make her a female character?
So Hardwicke actually originated in another series, which was it's a kind of this sci-fi comedic backpacking series that I did and previously, and she just kind of appeared out of nowhere as a kind of a blink and you miss her kind of thing. And she showed up in the second book in the series, Genius to Milo, for like a chapter, and she was only in it partially, but immediately, I've always loved private detectives, noir, all that kind of cops and mysteries and thrills. I love all that stuff. But and why she was a female character, honestly, she decided, I didn't create her. She showed up. She told me that she was ready to play. So it's more like she conjured herself and told me to get to work, more than I decided that it had to be. And what happened is that once she showed up, I said, ooh, now that's interesting. And I thought about it, and I immediately was just drawn to the character. And I created an anthology, which was all about various sci-fi tropes, because I wanted a vehicle to experiment to see if Hardwicke could work as a standalone character. So I wrote one short story with her as a test case that fits in this other book. And I said, all right, this really works. And then from there, I just started writing. I've written, I don't know, about a half dozen short stories with Hardwicke. And then now I've done 5 novels, and I like the room to run. And she just, once she kind of showed up and I kind of got to know her a little bit, and I just, I fell in love with the character. She's a part of me. She's going to be a part of me. And I like the fact that she is a female character, because it forces me to think a little bit differently as an author. It's male authors get off. Any author will get asked often, how do you feel about writing, genders other than your own? And, a lot of times what happens is you write a character that's your gender, but you just gender switch them, but everything else is the same. Like you could say, you could write a female character and say, well, yeah, but really that's a male character that you just happen to, who has traditional male attitudes and approaches, and you just made her female. Or you could do the reverse is true. I didn't really want that. I wanted someone who was going to be a little more rough and tumble, but has a different approach to things. Hardwicke is also a single mother. And it's a very important relationship for her. And it's thematic in the first two books, so which is Crackle and Fire and Fractured Lives. Thematically, one of the big issues for Hardwicke is, and her son at that point is only about 5 or 6, can I be this hard-boiled private eye doing this very dangerous work? This is not really like a 9-to-5 gig where you punch in and punch out. I mean, I don't know, I'll be gone for a day, a week, a month, a year, I don't know. Can I be this hard-boiled sci-fi private eye and be a good mother to my son? Now, which I think is a reasonable question, right? So if the answer is yes, then what does her life actually look like? If the answer is no, well, what does her life look like? And I really wanted to kind of dive into the element of being a mother and not just a parent, and what that means to have this relationship with the son, even though maybe intuitively she probably wouldn't have decided, oh, now that I have this career, let me have a kid. It didn't really work that way. So she's trying to make it work. So how do I hold on to my parentage, my femininity, while I'm doing this very complicated, very dangerous work where I'm being challenged on a daily basis, just being me? And that was really interesting to me. And I wanted to see if I could do it. And the readers have told me that they seem to like the way I'm handling it. So I'm not going to declare that I've gotten it right. I let other people make that decision. They seem to tell me that they think that I have. So that makes me happy. And I use some of my own experiences and that of I have 2 kids myself. I have 14-year-old twins. So I know what that's like to juggle lives. And that became a big part of Hardwicke. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because those two things would be like in exact opposition to each other. Like, why would you put yourself in harm's way if you have this child to take care
Right.
of, and they're counting on you, and you would have to have a major support system in your background, right?
It's a very serious element of contention for Hardwicke. She really struggles with that balance in the first 2 books. And in fact, in Crackle and Fire, when we first meet Hardwicke, so I'll give you kind of just the frame up of what the book is that she's approached by a young accounting executive who says, I was in charge of the interns. One of them, who was middle-aged and starting a new career, and he left. He stole some very sensitive corporate files, and I really need you to get them back. And she doesn't want to take the case because there are some unsavory characters attached to what's going on here. But for reasons I will not explain, she feels like she has no choice but to take on this case. And she does. And it leads her down a pathway where she gets mixed in with an Occupy Wall Street type of a socio-political movement. She gets caught between these 2 dueling gangsters, and she gets entangled with this madman from Earth he's essentially a serial killer who has galactic ambitions. And if he makes it onto her realm, it's going to be bad news for like a whole lot of people. While this is going on, her son has already been missing. And she's desperately trying to find him. But the problem is that you can't spend every nanosecond searching. You still have to function as a human being. You have to live. And she's really torn up inside about how to balance these lives. And, how do I not have a nervous breakdown with the fact that my child is missing while I'm having to not just function, but do this other very dangerous world. And over 2 books, it becomes her relationship with her son is critical to her evolution as a character. So that was kind of a big thing. And then in the second two books in particular, really the last three, she also has a protege, Eric Whistler, who shows up from the beginning. And so she's early mid 30s when we meet her. Whistler is about 10 years her junior. And he's all, put me in, coach. I'll do anything. I'll dumpster dive for evidence. I'll stay up for 5 days straight analyzing information. You tell me, I'll do it. Well, after a couple of books, he starts to level up and he says, I want a seat at the table. And she essentially says, oh, really? Well, good for you. And they have a lot of friction between the two of them because she never said that she was a good mentor, a good teacher, but she kind of feels like she needs the kind of work she's doing. She needs another set of hands, but she never said that she was good at doing this. So her style is she doesn't know, like, I can't be too mothery because I'm not your mom. I'm running a business here and I'm doing dangerous stuff. Like, you're going to have to hold your own in this dangerous world or you can't help me. But she can't expect him to know how to do stuff. She has to teach him. So how patient can I be? Should I be? Do I know how to be? And sometimes she's good at it, and sometimes she's not so good at it. And she's very hard on him because she has very high expectations. It wasn't so easy for her to like build this practice. She had to make a lot of mistakes and take on a lot of cases and build this from nothing. And so she's kind of got that going on there. And she also has a mentor herself, Lieutenant Tarish, who is with the ICD, the International Crime Division. Kind of think of it like their CIA or FBI. And as I say, he says he's my mentor-ish, right? We're not friends. We're not friends. They kind of work together sometimes. She uses him, he uses her, and that gets complicated. And she has a core group of friends who drop in and out of her life. She's got Nini, who is this tiny person. She's not even 5 feet tall. She's this, she's got very dark skin and she's an ER nurse and she has seen it. She's tough as nails, has seen it all, been covered in every kind of puke and blood and snot and everything you could think of. But when she's not working, it's all glam all the way. She just wants to be pampered all the time. Hardwicke also has this other friend who is Nini's best friend, which is Dolores. She's this giant hulk of a woman. And she works as a baggage handler at, you can see it in, let's see, the fourth book. So you can see here, right, this ship here. It's a galactic cruise ship. Think of it as just as you go out to sea, you go out to cruise, right? Except it's not on the ocean, it's out in space. Okay. But she's a baggage handler. But she's also kind of Hardwicke's muscle, but she's also an investor too. So she kind of knows a lot of things. She knows a lot of people. So she's muscle, but she's sort of like kind of like quietly very smart. And Nini and Dolores are friends. And then Hardwicke also has a Frankie the Brush. And Frankie the Brush is based on a real guy. He's a contractor. He's my contractor, in fact. And he paints houses, and he also does real estate renovations and design. And so he knows a lot of people and he kind of pops in and out of her life. And all these people kind of populate Hardwicke's world. And they kind of help her in certain cases. And sometimes they get mixed up in her stuff and it doesn't go so great for everybody. So Hardwicke is sort of managing a lot of relationships personally while she's handling these very complicated, difficult cases. And the other person who shows up, and I love this character too, is Bernice. Now, Bernice is so Hardwicke she doesn't work for an agency. She doesn't work for the government. She's not Batman, right? She doesn't have $1 billion where she can buy all this tech. She's got Bernice, who's her like tech ninja. And Bernice is an engineer, and she was in a terrible accident. And when we met her, she's already fully formed. She's in a hover chair. She has cybernetic implant and she has robotic arms and legs that have to be fused into her because she had multiple amputations for reasons I won't talk about. And she kind of is, she's the girl in the chair who does the computer stuffy that when Hardwicke needs her. And all these people kind of float in and out of her world to sort of give texture, and they populate and she leans on them. And they lean on each other and they don't, and they argue and they love each other and they hate each other and they help each other and they fight with each other, all while she's kind of managing all these kind of various cases. So there's a lot of texture in her world, and she's trying to figure out how all this works. And sometimes she has some relationships, sometimes she doesn't. Sometimes they go okay, sometimes they don't go so okay, and sometimes people make it to the end of the books and sometimes they don't.
So so you said it's a thriller. Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like you've built an amazing world, first off.
Thank you.
So how gory is this then?
So mostly not super gory, mostly. But this book, so this is book 4. So this was Blunt Force Rising. Now you could see here, so in this book, Hardwicke and Whistler have been hired to do private security on this galactic cruise ship, which is hosting an AI and robotics conference at a time when androids, as you can see here, and you can see the bloody tears here, have been granted rights. But just because they have rights on paper doesn't mean that everyone's necessarily okay with that. So on this ship, during this conference, a murder takes place, which sets off a chain reaction. Communications are knocked out. There's no way to call for help, and there's no way off the ship. You are literally a million miles from anywhere, and something has happened, which has sent off basically humans and androids together collectively are in this essentially a zombie apocalypse fight to the death. It's like Die Hard in space, and that one is a bloody battle to the end, and either you make it all the way to the end or you don't. And I'm telling you, some people who we know and love do not make it.
That is so funny. That's your 4th book. So I was just talking to another author, and she was like, yeah, there's always death in the 4th book. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was the 4th book in my series. There is death in there too. I was like, how does that work?
It's fun. It was really not intentional. I knew for a long time that I wanted to. What I do is in every book, I challenge myself. Every plot line is different. I don't like to repeat myself, and I wanted to do a locked room thriller where there's no place to go. You cannot leave. You can't escape. It's impossible. So being sort of claustrophobic and having to navigate this, not only is there a mystery going on, but there's also like a bloody battle to the finish. How do you survive? And then how do you solve a mystery at the same time? It's while you're cut off from civilization, where life support is maybe starting to fail. Like there's a real ticking clock here. Like you got to get some stuff done here. So I didn't plan it to be the 4th one. I just knew I wanted to write that kind of a book, and it happened to be the 4th one.
No, yeah, it was just funny that it was the 4th one, and I was thinking from that, I was talking to that other author, but
yeah.
So how do you said you like to challenge yourself in each book. Is that like how you kind of come up with what her mission is in the next book? Like, just
yeah.
Your interest?
Yeah, so the second book, so Fractured Lives, is she is hired by a woman who says, please don't dismiss me. The cops laughed me out of the room. I have a daughter who's a freshman at this prestigious design college where they work on celestial design. Everyone's telling me she had a nervous breakdown. She didn't. Someone has stolen a piece of her soul, and I need you to get it back. So I really wanted to say, well, what would happen if you were dealing with someone who was having a real psychiatric crisis? And this kind of came out of things that we saw during the pandemic and the way it affected kids in particular. And I really wanted her to be challenged in that way. And we meet someone from Hardwicke's past. We learned her origin story, which I had mapped out many, many years ago. And I was very excited to tell that one. And that's where we kind of really meet Bernice for the first time. It has a very heavy cyberpunk vibe to it. And I really wanted to explore that one, which was totally different than book 1. In book 3, Hot Ash, Hardwicke is approached by a woman. She's a middle-aged widow who says, my elderly husband had a real estate empire, affordable housing. And I know that world because I work in the real estate. During the day, I work in the real estate market. So I know construction and development and all that stuff. And when my husband was on his deathbed, my stepkids And when he was like literally losing his mind because he was dying, they messed with him, had him change the will. He cut me out of everything. They stole my empire, my real estate. I need you to get that back from me. She investigates it and she winds up getting looped into this. She stumbles upon the synthetic form of concrete, this highly addictive form of cocaine, and this off-world dome city that's covering up this very significant conspiracy. So I wanted to take us completely out of, once we were deep in Hardwicke's world, I wanted to get completely away from Hardwicke's world and go someplace off campus, which I hadn't really done much in the first two books. And then in the fifth book, the one that won Book of the Year, I went the opposite way. And she is, for reasons I will not explain, we see that she's been recently released from prison.
Ooh.
And she's hired by a very nasty pimp who she does not want to work for all sorts of reasons, but she feels like she has no choice. His best earner has been killed, but for him, it's personal and not about business. He wants to find out what happened. And Hardwicke winds up getting paired with this sketchy detective, and she has to kind of investigate his world. So it's very heavy into the sex trade, and I wanted to really get into like what it's like for this is not it's not anti-sex worker, it's anti-abusive sex trade, and what women go through and when they feel trapped and they can't go anywhere. Meanwhile, Hardwicke's Whistler has been caught in some sort of a temporal loop. He's phasing in and out of matter, and when he comes back in, he can only send out fragments of what's happening to him, and she doesn't understand where he is or what's happening. Meanwhile, the fabric of space-time is literally disintegrating. It is crumbling. And all these pieces kind of tie together, and she's got to figure this all out. And if she doesn't, it is literally game over for all of us.
Interesting.
So
Very high stakes.
Yeah, so every book the plot comes at it from a different point of view, and I wanted to explore thematically across the series: friendship, love, loyalty, what these things mean. What does it mean to be human? How do you explore humanity? How do you be yourself in a challenging world that's ever changing? And how do you find your path in a world that's going crazy, which is sort of familiar, actually.
It does feel that way for the past 5 years, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And do you think that's like a safer way to look at all these issues in this like sci-fi fantasy world?
100%. Yes. There's a lot. Every book that I write there's at least some element of things that I've seen, thought, experienced, and I want to sort of, how do I explore those ideas? Like in this book, in the last one, in Trigger Point, she also, we spent a lot of time, you could see it here on the cover. This was sort of partly by accident, this Rottweiler. I knew I wanted Hardwicke caught in this cage of electricity, which is significant to the book. And the way it originally is that they were just like these little dots the designer did. They were like stars from the electricity. But I saw an outline of a Rottweiler, and I said, "Did you mean to do that?" He goes, "No, I didn't even notice it." But the thing is, this is actually important to the plot of the book. So it was, and she spends a lot of time, sometime in the dreamscape. So we really dive into like dreams and nightmares and symbolism as well. So if you ever seen the movie like Altered States and Dreamscape, so those had a lot of influence on me, and I really wanted to dive into kind of the really deep, if you read any Freud or really Carl Jung and his ideas about collective consciousness, and which is also kind of thematic to a lot of what I do. So I try to infuse fairly significant philosophy and mythology into this sort of this gritty sci-fi thriller world, and while also how do we maintain our humanity through all of this. So while all of them are, these are, they're thrillers, they're supposed to be entertaining, but there's meat on the bones.
Fun. And so do they have like diseases and all those things figured out? Are people living longer, or is it kind of the same as what we experience
Yeah,
now?
I don't get into that part of it, at least not so far quite as much, although in some of the books I talk about synthetic organs and, and transplants and that kind of thing, but it's not, I wouldn't say that's a huge theme in any of the novels, but it doesn't mean it won't be.
I don't know that we want another pandemic novel yet, right?
Trust me, I'm not going to be writing a pandemic novel.
No. Yeah, I unfortunately did that in 2019. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
This has been super fun. I have one question.
Sure.
When you're mapping out your books, how do you do that? Like, do you have like all the plot lines on a page and you're like making sure they're all connected and interwoven and running?
Right,
I imagine your brain's just like steaming.
it's the classic, am I a plotter or a pantser? The answer is I'm a bit of both. Every book I need to know the end, because I like to know where I'm driving towards. And then there are certain elements where I say, well, I know this has to happen here and this has to happen. Here's a scene that has to happen and this has to happen and this has to happen. But I leave some space in between for like that, spontaneous magic to happen, because you just never know. New characters pop up all the time. And I'm like, who the hell are you? And they say, well, who the hell are you? And then we start getting into it. And sometimes you know how it goes. You think you have a great idea and you're moving. And then the words just kind of want to go in a completely different direction. And you change a few things. So I do that. But I do have a pretty solid outline. Sometimes I outline more, sometimes I outline a little bit less. Even when I outline a lot for me is 6 bullet points. Although sometimes I will have like copious amounts of dialogue that I write when it comes to me, and I stick them in a file somewhere and I know where it goes. Sometimes they're sketches of ideas or links to things I want to include or world building or whatever. So it's kind of let's call it a loosely solid outline, but enough room to improvise.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I get bored if I have too detailed of an outline, because then I'm just like, oh, I'm just typing something that I already know. Right?
Yeah.
So, well, this has been great having you here, Russ. Can you tell us where to find you and your book?
Sure. So you can find me. I'm online everywhere. My website is just russcolchamiro.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram. I also host my own podcast, Russ's Rock and Roller Coaster, which is free on YouTube. And I've interviewed a who's who of sci-fi, fantasy, mystery, crime, horror, thriller writers up and down the stack, from New York Times best-selling authors down to maybe some more local authors who you don't know. I've done about 130 or 40 episodes. Just go to YouTube and just type in my name and you'll find it, and they're all free. I'm actually going to do my season finale soon. We're going to do Andor now that the new season's coming out. So I've done a bunch of episodes on Star Trek and Star Wars and The Expanse and Blade Runner, but also a lot of author interviews. Well, anyway, so you can find me on YouTube and online, and you can find my books on Amazon, and you can always get them directly from me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we'll have you back when you release your next book.
That would be great.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.